Hi, my name is Barry O'Sullivan. I'm here to talk very briefly about the New Directions in Assessment and Evaluation seminar to be held in KL in Malaysia in July. First of all, I should talk a little bit about what's happening in language testing at the moment, and I guess we could talk about lots and lots of things, but I'll just focus on a few points that I think are pretty relevant to the seminar. Well, there's lots happening actually. The big thing really is the introduction of the notion of standards and the relevance of standards to exams. And I guess in Europe the biggest thing that's around is this CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, which really nowadays presents us with an opportunity for a dialogue between educators and language testers. And as such, it has a huge influence across Europe and beyond Europe. Not just an influence in the policy of testing, but even in the contents of testing, and what are the kind of things we should be testing at what level, and actually this whole notion of level. How do we know what our tests mean? Are they relevant? Are the scores that we offer in our test meaningful in any real way? And one of the things that we've got to try to do, and we are working on at the moment, is forming links between our tests and education standards such as the CEFR. In fact, one of the big challenges we face is the convincing people like yourselves that validity and level and standards are really all part of the same argument. One equals the other. So the other big thing, of course, that's happening at the moment is the growing and widespread use of technology, which is used at the test development stage, at the delivery stage, at the analysis stage, and even in the archiving or the storage stage. It's a huge part of testing. We're working on tests of speaking now, for example, that people can take on their telephones. And we're also looking at other kinds of tests that people can use smartphones and other kinds of phones for. So we're looking at using technology at all kinds of levels. Taking a slightly different perspective then, we look at the notion of professionalism in testing. And this idea has been around now for some time, and people have been broadening the scale and scope of professionalism, helped by organisations like ILTA, the International Language Testing Association, and IALTA, the European Association, and of course various associations across the world, including associations across East Asia. These people have introduced the notion of professionalism, have broadened the professional scope, and through that have introduced, I believe, the concept and have broadened the acceptance of the concept of localization. And by that I mean the importance of the local in the test. So international tests are very good. They give us a lot of good things. However, they're not always culturally or linguistically appropriate for the students who are taking the test. In order to make those really appropriate, we need local expertise, and we need to understand that local expertise is a very important part of the test development process. So local is best in many ways. Of course, the danger with that is local we may claim is best, but if we don't do local well, and if local isn't as good as the big international tests, which are very good, but have been criticised for things like the content, the format and the topic, as being maybe not as culturally relevant to candidates in East Asia as they might be. But they do it well in other ways. They're consistent, they're relevant, they're accurate. Now, if local tests can't can't replicate that, well then they're no good. And it undermines the whole argument for localization by not getting it right. So there's a huge pressure on exam developers and ministries all across the world, and in particular in places like in East Asia, to get it right, because of the social impact of testing, not just on the individual who takes the test, but on society as a whole. This is hugely important, particularly where tests are related to government policy, because if the test isn't right, how do we know that the results are meaningful. And how can that help us to develop new policy? Well, one of the things we can do is look at the other side of the topic for this seminar, the evaluation side. In a speech that I listened to just this morning on the radio, the Minister for International Development here in the UK used the term value for taxpayers' money probably 10 times in about 4 minutes in an interview on the radio. And you might laugh at it at the time as being a bit over the top, but he actually had a very strong point to make, and a point particularly that policymakers who may be listening to this should and do take into account every day of their working lives. The notion of accountability. People are going to be held more and more accountable, particularly as this recession grows. The only way we can ensure accountable behaviour is to have formally appropriate evaluations. And evaluation has been with us a long time, but we tend to use predictable models based on essentially a European construct, North American construct. We may need to look at that again, and this seminar will give us an opportunity, a unique opportunity to take that view. So the benefits to attending, well, I guess the biggest one is you'll see what's going on, what's happening in the world of testing, particularly looking at the papers and the presentations that will come from within the region and outside the region. It'll give a really unique opportunity to meet with some of the top professionals in the region to see what they have to say, to hear about the research that's happening in the region, and to see how the work that's going on in the region can help to develop and to advance this notion of localization and the importance of professionalization and localization within the region. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all in, when is it? July, in Malaysia. Goodbye. Thank you very much.